Today, Russia strikes Ukraine, Richard Sharp resigns from the BBC, and Vice News lays off staff. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Friday the 28th of April 2023. Russia launched its biggest airstrike against Ukraine for nearly 2 months early on Friday, killing at least 16 people at the time of writing. Missiles struck a residential building in the central city of Uman, killing at least 10 according to the regional governor. In Dnipro, in Ukraine's southeast, a missile hit a house, killing 2 people. Explosions also rocked the capital, Kyiv, which had not been hit by missiles for more than 50 days. Ukrainian authorities say 11 cruise missiles and 2 drones were intercepted over the city. The barrage comes as Ukraine prepares to launch its long-anticipated counteroffensive against Russian forces in the east and south of the country. The winter months saw little change in battle lines, and the war became one of attrition. Ukraine's defense minister said the Ukrainian forces are broadly ready for the counteroffensive, and that as soon as there is God's will, the weather, and a decision by commanders, we will do it. There is, however, some good news for Ukraine. Yesterday, Jens Stoltenberg, NATO's Secretary-General, confirmed that Ukraine had received 98% of the combat vehicles that it had been promised. This includes 1,550 armoured vehicles and 230 tanks, which can be used to form units and retake territory from the Russians. Talking about this, Stoltenberg said that, in total, we've trained and equipped more than 9 new Ukrainian armoured brigades. This will put Ukraine in a strong position to continue to retake occupied territory. Meanwhile, in Russia, there are multiple reports that Russian Colonel General Mikhail Mizintsev, dubbed the Butcher of Mariupol, had been dismissed as Deputy Defense Minister. Mizintsev, who has been sanctioned by the West, earned his nickname as it was he who orchestrated the siege of the southern Ukrainian city port of Mariupol last year, before being appointed Deputy Defense Minister in charge of supplies and logistics. At time of writing, there has been no explanation of his dismissal. On Thursday, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe voted to say that the forced deportation of children from Ukrainian regions occupied by Russia is genocide. It's these unlawful deportations that earned Vladimir Putin and Russia's Children's Rights Commissioner an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. The Council of Europe's resolution called for immediate and urgent action to be taken to halt the practices of unlawful forcible transfer and deportation currently being carried out by the Russian Federation against the Ukrainian population. Okay, so that's today's main story, but there's a lot more going on around the world. So here's a rundown of 3 other stories. In big news this morning, Richard Sharp has resigned from his position as chair of the BBC. Sharp has been in hot water for the last few months over the exact details over his appointment. Sharp was appointed to the role in January 2021. However, it was quickly revealed that he'd donated £400,000 to the Conservative Party. In January 2023, the Sunday Times reported that, right before he became chairman, he helped the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson secure an £800,000 loan. Following this, Sharp was subject to calls for him to resign. In response to this, an investigation was conducted, looking into this cronyism row. The report summarising the investigation's findings was released today. It concluded that Mr. Richard Sharp failed to disclose potential perceived conflicts of interest to the panel, which interviewed candidates and advised ministers on who to appoint. In his resignation statement, Sharp claimed that he has always maintained the breach was inadvertent and not material, but he concluded that "I've decided that it's right to prioritise the interests of the BBC." He ended the letter praising the BBC, saying, "The BBC's contribution to our national life is immense. Its people are hardworking and absolutely brilliant, and preserving and enhancing it matters." There's more on the way, but be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to make the daily briefing part of your daily routine, or just search for us on your podcast app to listen along. Former Brazilian President Bolsonaro was questioned by police earlier this week looking into his actions relating to the January the 8th attacks on key government buildings. At the time, Bolsonaro was in the US, having avoided the inauguration a week earlier of his leftist rival, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Police asked him about a video he shared 2 days after the violence, which claimed the election had been rigged. Brazilian media reports Bolsonaro's representatives as saying the ex-president mistakenly shared the video while under the effect of morphine in a US hospital. Brazil's Prosecutor General Augusto Aras has said that Bolsonaro allegedly encouraged the perpetuation of crimes against the rule of law. Bolsonaro never openly conceded defeat and spread unsubstantiated claims about the integrity of the voting system. This police investigation is not his only legal problem. Bolsonaro faces at least 16 separate investigations and, a couple of weeks ago, was questioned by police over allegations he tried to take millions of dollars worth of jewellery gifted by the Saudi government. He denies wrongdoing in all cases. Earlier this week, we saw that BuzzFeed News is going to close, with the parent company making huge layoffs. Founder Jonah Peretti told staff on Thursday that the company can no longer continue to fund BuzzFeed News. In another blow to journalism, Vice News has also cancelled their flagship news programme this week. Their show, Vice News Tonight, will restructure in a way that will result in layoffs. In a statement to employees, two co-CEOs of Vice Media Group, or VMC, said, "In response to the current market conditions and business realities facing VMG and the broader news and media industry, we're moving forward on some painful but necessary reductions, primarily across our news business." They didn't specify the number of layoffs. And it seems it's not just independent media that's struggling. Journalism titans such as CNN, The Washington Post, NPR, and NBC News have all let staff go this month too. Obviously, all of this prompted questions about how journalism can be viable in the 21st century. We're going to end the main section with some positive news, and we look to the US, where the smoking rate among adults has fallen to a historic low, according to the US Centre for Disease Control and Prevention. The survey data found that 11% of US adults were smokers last year, down from roughly 12.5% in 2020 and 2021. It follows a continual decline in smoking since the 1960s, when more than 40% of adults were smokers. That's all we have time for on YouTube, but the briefing isn't over. That's because I sat down with Jack to discuss company earnings reports in the extended ad-free edition of the Daily Briefing, only on Nebula. That's the streaming service we're building with a bunch of our creator friends, many of whom you're likely to be already watching. That means that by signing up, you not only get an extended ad-free daily briefing every single day, you also get to watch exclusive and ad-free videos from the best educational creators on YouTube. That's things like Real Life Law's incredible Modern Conflicts, which breaks down contemporary disputes around the world, Neo's Underexposure, which beautifully dives into complex and shadowy topics you've always wanted to know more about, or Extremities from Wendover Productions, which uncovers some of the world's most remote places. All of these are only available on Nebula, just like our extended daily briefings and a whole bunch of other exclusive TLDR content which never comes to YouTube. If you want to sign up, use the link in the description so that they know you came through us. That helps us out a whole lot, as does watching on Nebula more generally. So thanks for signing up, and we'll see you on Nebula.